And I'm back with another computer case review, and this one is very budget friendly, yet there's a lot of interesting features to be mentioned here. Today we're looking at the Okinos Cypress 3. Hey guys, welcome back to our HRSS channel. My name is Ivan, and today we're looking at the Okinos Cypress 3, and this is a MATX case or small form factor case that was sent to me by Okinos. And if you've seen my previous video from Okinos, the Aqua 7, you know there's some interesting features and interesting engineering implementations they have done in these cases, and this one is excellent, not just because what the case is, but also the price. We're talking about around $50 on Amazon, and for $50, absolutely a recommendation for anybody that wants to build a small computer in this kind of a size. And over the past couple of years, I have built several ones like this for my family members, for friends and stuff like that. Even for myself, when I really wanted something compact to just move around different desks and stuff like that. Actually, my editing machine is very similar to this case. So without further ado, we're gonna jump in straight into the details. Grab yourself a drink, a snack. You know it's gonna be lengthy. You know I'm gonna be talking about a lot of details and options and possibilities with these cases. So yeah, pull up a chair and we're gonna dive straight in. At the end, we're gonna talk about it in the conclusion. So per usual, I'm gonna start with the accessory box that's housed inside the hard drive cage, and a little graphic on top of it. Really nice, actually. Like that, how they're explaining that the standoffs of the motherboard are already pre-installed on the tray. Excellent to see. And branding, of course, for the Okinos. And here are the contents. So they give you two of those extra planks, which I absolutely love, because the back of the case, the four included, are the ones that you snap off and you no longer can replace, but they give you two extra, which is good. Ideally, I would love to see four, but if there were four, that would be already on the case. So it is what it is. We have 5 zip ties. We have some of the screws here, extra element if you break it off for the front panel. And then we have 8 long screws in case you want to mount fans on top of the motherboard shroud, which I've mentioned that before, I will never do. But if you want to do that, they have provided the long screws. Ideally, I would have loved to see 12 of those, not 8, because I'm going to show you later where these can be actually very, very useful. And of course, we have the screws for the hard drive, SSDs, and all that stuff. We have the user manual in English with very good, nice graphic explanations if you want to work with that, if you're not familiar. And last but not least, I absolutely love this. They actually provided a little sample from the walnut tree or the walnut trim. See how thick it is. Actual walnut with the certificate and everything that is used on the front panel of the case and brings that elegant look of the case. And I really like the case makers started implementing like real wood in some of their products for a little bit more elegant look. And now we're gonna move on to the back of the case. Going to the back of the case, real overview here. You'll see we have mounted a 120mm fan and no option 140, but considering the size of the case and the price, I'm not expecting it. Moving down lower, we have the 4 AIO plates here, and these are, like I mentioned, the one you break off and you have to replace with something aftermarket, or if it's only 2 that you're replacing, here are the ones that they provided, and they kind of match the dotted or circle penetrations here, which makes it really uniform. I like that. And it's not some cases I've seen this will be circles and they will give you one with the stripes. So yeah, uniformity is better. A little security here on the side with the sliding door to mount your graphics cards and everything else, and right at the bottom is the place for the power supply. No power supply frame to mount it externally. Again, considering the price, not surprised. So not much to talk about here. Pretty classic look, pretty simple, but functional in my opinion. So let's move on to the right side of the case, or the back side, and we check out what's inside. Now, before I open the panel, real quick on the screws, and these are the screws they have. They're not capped, they are unscrewable and fell off, but they're not with the metal heads, they're the plastic heads with the regular screw. These are easier to open in my experience, but over time that plastic ages and might crack, so keep that in mind. Again, keep considering that the price of this case is only $50. So no problem here. Here's the side panel, nothing to write home about, just a regular side panel, no penetrations, no filters of any kind. And now if we look at the back side, let's start from the top. This time we have two large penetrations on top. Right now the fans are kind of tight here. Let me untie them real quick and we'll see how it looks. Take them off to the side. So yeah, plenty of tying points that you can use for this kind of ties, twist ties or zip ties, so that you can do some kind of a good cable management all around here. Really nice. This is a placement where you can mount your SSD drive. And now this is one of the things that I personally am not a huge fan, but I know this specific case is not really tailored towards people like me. They like to use AIOs all the time. You see where the last screws for the top holes of the motherboard is, and the distance between here and the roof is about an inch. So using AIO on top of the case or the roof of the case is impossible. And why is it impossible? Because how small the case is and how close this is. If you put the radiator and the fans, they're gonna severely hang over the motherboard. And if you're using memory that has higher heat sinks and other components are protruding, it's going to be hitting those components. Also, the mounting of the back fan is an issue because it's so high. Yeah, you can slide it down a little bit, but the clearance is still not going to be enough to use a real AIO. So is it possible to use NAOs? Yeah, I'll show you how. Well, obviously one of the options will be 120 AIO in the back, which not too many people probably will opt out to use, but it's an option. And here we have the big penetration for the motherboard. And if we look at the fans, these are only 3-pin, no 4-pin PWM fans. Those are not RGB. Keep in mind there's a version of this Cypress 3 case that is ARGB, and which also includes a controller for those 4 fans. So keep that in mind. If you like RGB or ARGB, this might be a better option for you to go with that one. But if you like more elegant, subdued and classic look with a little bit more luxury with the walnut, this case would be the option for you. So 3-pin connector, all the 3 fans on the front are daisy chained together, so you have only one header coming out and one on the rear fan. So these you can plug directly into your motherboard, or you can plug them into a controller, or something like this that I've showed before, SATA to fan adapter, or even something like this, SATA again to Molex, and then from the Molex, if you want to make them quieter, this is to 7 volts, 4 headers to make those fans run quieter. We're going to see how that performs in a second. Penetrations in the front where you can run your 24 power cable, your PCI Express cable. So these are significant with some more tying points for cable management. So far, I'm not seeing anything disturbing here. Everything seems absolutely fine for what the case is and what the intent of the case is. Actually, the cables for the fans are extremely long. Actually, you can run them anywhere inside to your motherboard. And now if we move down to the bottom chamber, let me untie this real quick and see what kind of cables and connectors we have here. One of the best things here about this AIO is that it's not on top of the case, but rather on the side. So this case is one of those that are made for you to put on top of the desk, which ideally I would do anyway. So we have the USB 3, which is better than most I've seen because it has those flat, more flexible cables. A lot of those makers still use the old school round cables that are very stiff and hard to route around. And we have the HD audio, we have the newer USB-C connector, and the rest of them obviously are the power connectors, reset switch, power switch, and all that stuff. Normal, but again, very happy with this cable and the inclusion of the USB-C, a little bit more modern here. And if I peek under, you will see where the AIO is in the front left side on the bottom chamber that you can easily access. And this is a mesh on the front as well for better ventilation. Now here with the power supply in the bottom, we have those dampening foams. Really like the inclusion of those, and those are longer. It's just not the short small one. Both sides are very long. That way when you put your power supply on top, it rests on top of it and it's not rubbing against the metal. to get scratched. In the manual, they're mentioning the different lengths of the power supplies, but if you have it in this kind of configuration where you have the hard drive cage and the power supply here, the distance is not that great, yet you can still fit a power supply that it's up to a 185 centimeters length. Yeah, you might have some problems with the cables right here. And the other configuration is if you reposition this hard drive cage forward, which I'm going to talk in a second. If you move it forward towards the front of the case, you can actually fit the 205 millimeter long power supply. And of course, if you remove it completely, you can use the longest possible, which they're saying 330 millimeter long. I have not seen that long of a power supply, but let's assume you can use the longest possible if you remove the hard drive cage, which in my particular case, if I am building this for hardware to use for myself, I will be removing this hard disk cage because I've said that before many times. I'm not using conventional hard drives in a gaming computer. Now, if I go here forward and show you this element, so you'll see how close this hard drive cage is to the fans. Now, the fans are currently mounted in a configuration where they are on the inside of the frame of the case. Okinos is saying that you can actually move these fans on the outside, and yes, you can. I will show you in a second what's going to happen then. If you move them on the outside, you will be able to move the hard drive cage forward and give you a little bit more space. And also, when I open the main chamber, I'm going to show you my discovery that they don't really mention in the user manual and the promotional kind of material on the website, but I think that there's some interesting options here. But anyway, so you see how close it is. This fan is not going to provide much air being that close to the hard drive cage and being kind of slammed halfway up, halfway down, and actually the middle of the fan is the penetration, so the air is going to be coming very slim on the side. So yeah, it's ideal to just remove the hard drive cage and let that air come inside and then go through the penetrations of this chamber right here and go up. Now we're gonna move to the front of the case and we're gonna continue from there. All right, front of the case in its whole glory. I absolutely love these walnut strips. I mean, maybe I'm getting tired of just uniform looking almost entirely the same computer cases, but seeing what Okinos have done here, and I know a lot of other case makers have implemented genuine materials like walnuts, like leather on their computer cases, but this one really looks nice. You'll see the black plus the walnut, just very, very classy looking. And the walnut is exactly the same thickness you saw on that sample they provided in the accessory box. Very nicely treated, smooth. And this is the front mesh. You see how this has this triangular shape. It's somewhat fine. It would have been even nicer if it's a finer mesh, but I expect a lot of dust to get accumulated. Now, what I don't like here, and you've heard me probably mentioning many times before on my previous reviews, is the bottom here. On the bottom, we have a hole. So instead of implementing something like Antec, a little nudge that you can pull this, there's a full-blown hole that you can put all your fingers inside and just yank that front panel out. And let me take it to the side and show you something for a second. So if I lay it down on the desk, here is the front panel. And look how big this cutout is, and expect all the dust to be coming through there as well. So as soon as I start building and using this case, I'll be putting a masking tape right on top of it to prevent that dust from coming in. Plastic clips for the mounting, so be careful when you're yanking these not to break them. They tend to age and break over time, so be careful. And right here we have the mesh. You'll see no extra filters. Now if I'm more careful, I'm probably gonna find myself a long enough magnetic filter and just place it in here. But again, that's just me. That's extra money you're gonna have to spend, so consider that. There are more penetrations on the side of the front panel. You'll see these are even larger, so expect more dust to get accumulated here and get inside. And because of the design and how recessed these are, the edges here will get a lot of dust, so it'll be a little bit of a pain to clean. To be honest, I like the style, it looks nice, but functional wise it will be a pain to clean. And yeah, maybe you should try to figure it out some way to kind of block this, to make it less susceptible to dust. Otherwise, the front panel design to me is excellent. Now, if we look at what's behind it, here they are. We have the 3 of the 4 included fans, and Okinos are including 4 120mm fans, 1 in the back, the other 3 are in the front, and as you can see, they're mounted behind the frame. You can reposition these, move them in the front of the frame, give you a little bit more space inside for lengthy graphics cards, or maybe more space here for the hard drives. It's up to you. Personally, what I'm going to do, if I'm using it in this specific configuration, I'm just going to remove the hard drive cage and leave it the way it is, because I like that there's a little bit more space, about a little less than an inch between the fans and the outside of the panel, which gives it a little bit more breathing room for that air to go inside and gets through. Now, obviously, you'll see on the frame there's a space for 140mm fans as well. So if you don't like these, you want to completely remove them or replace them with anything, you can just take them out and put 140s right here, and they will be able to be used. Now, of course, you're not going to be able to use 3 140s. You're only going to be able to use 2 140s because of the height of the case. These are the way they're mounted. They're utilizing the whole height of the case all the way from the bottom to the top, so there's no room really to wiggle and move. So personally, I'm going to leave the way they are with the 3 120s. Especially if you're staying on a budget, you don't want to really spend way too much money to improve or, I guess, customize your own case. Now, if you want to put RGB 120s, yeah, you can probably do that. But yeah, this is the front. Some good penetrations for running cables. If you want to put these in the front outside of the frame, then you can run the cables through these penetrations and you'll be fine. But one of the discoveries that I made, and I think this is very possible, and probably a lot of you can do that as well, is if you leave it in this kind of configuration, fans on the inside, you are not going to able to use any AIOs. But if you move those on the outside and place the radiator on the inside, and that way you put the screws in and hold the fans to the radiator, I think that's a possibility. Because if I swing it around in the main chamber, and I'll show you just in a second, there's just enough clearance to use a regular 360 or 240 AIO radiator with the fans on the outside. So that's a possibility. It will take some time to finagle it in, but it's a possibility in my opinion, and you can definitely use that in this case. So let me go to the left panel now. You'll see we have a small glass panel. Luckily, it is reinforced with a frame in the back, and there's some insulation, so you're not gonna have any rattles or anything like that. The thickness is about 2.5, 3 millimeters over here. Very subtle branding Okinos right there on the corner. Really like that when companies are doing minimalistic branding. Power, reset, 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, 2 USB 3 ports, and the USB-C here. Everything you need right here at the reach of your hand, and the bottom chamber all ventilated and penetrated. You'll see how the legs look like, and there's about 3/4 of an inch height between the desk and the top of the case. Unfortunately, the legs are the foam ones, not the rubber ones, so over time they're gonna collapse and this plastic will rub against the desk, so keep that in mind. And the filter for the power supply is one of those cheaper ones that you can just pinch and move away, so you're gonna have to tilt the whole case sideways if you want to remove it, and just, you know, pinch and remove like this. But again, for the price, I'm not expecting this filter to be anything special. Here are the legs, just this foam, like I mentioned, thin. And if once you put your components inside and the weight of the case start pushing down, these will collapse and kind of become useless. This is where you can reposition your hard drive cage from this area to the other area, slightly forward. Again, I'm not doing that. I'm going to be removing it. So yeah, this is the bottom. Let's go see the main chamber. So 2 screws more to remove the front glass panel, and here is the main chamber right here.
Not a lot of space. Keep that in mind, guys. Micro ATX and mini ATX motherboards can be used in this case. And once you put them in, you're not gonna have much space. So you better calculate and engineer your build before you put the motherboard in. So penetrations here to run through cables, really like that. And here are the two optional fans that you can install on top of the power supply shroud with these longer screws that you can just put the fan and run it through right here. Now personally, I will never do this because not only this case has barely any space inside, but this is kind of pointless. Once you put your power supply, the power supply blocks most of the penetrations here, so yeah, it's kind of a pointless thing to do. Here's the back side here with the fan mounted, and you see the clearance to the top is barely any if you slide it all the way down. And here are the last two mounting points here, or for the motherboard, so the space is not enough. You can put two fans on top, and that's about it. We have filter on top, magnetic, which is cool, but you'll see two 120 or two 140 fans can be mounted on top, and that's about it. Nothing else you can do when it comes to the AIO. Now what I'm thinking here is look at that situation. So currently the fans are mounted on the inside. Now if we reposition these on the outside and leave the radiator on the inside, this is the exact space. So the thickness of these fans are the space, or the thickness of the radiator of most conventional AIOs. I'm not talking about the Arctic, which is thicker, but these are the most ones have about the same thickness of the fans. So this is the space left. So you'll see not even a centimeter here. So maybe 7-8 millimeters. You still can try to fit that 360 on the inside, fans on the outside, round the tubes on top, obviously, not on the bottom. And that way you can use a 360 in the front. It will take some time. It will take some trial and error. It will take some maybe specific type of radiators. But I think most conventional ones, which unfortunately I don't have, I only use the Arctic when I do my tests, and the Arctic is not going to fit in here. You can do this. Fans on the outside, radiator on the inside, and that could work. But yeah, what else is here to mention? Not much. There's no graphics card holder. There's none of that stuff. But the assumption here is if you're using this kind of a compact case, you're probably not going to be using a 4080, 4090, or 5080, 5090 kind of cards. It will be something smaller. Now the maximum length of graphics cards that can be used here, Okinos was saying 330 millimeter long. This is with the fans positioned on the outside. So slightly less than that, you're looking at 285 millimeter length of graphics cards. So keep that in mind. Not really a vertical mount option here as well, unless you get one of those on magnets standing upright, additional ones that you can just remove all that stuff and run the cables through here. It's not impossible, but it's not really made to be used that way. So this is more of a classic look and classic style horizontal mounted graphics card over here. Like the large penetrations, for a reason that if you mount your GPU right here, I will give you a little bit more air coming from the bottom, because this bottom fan, once you remove the hard drive cage and mount your power supply, is still going to push some air through these penetrations up, feeding some air to that graphics card fans. So has some idea here, and it's definitely going to work a little better in these situations. Just I'm not mounting any fans. It's gonna give me less clearance for a GPU, and it's not gonna be that functional. But currently, yeah, in this kind of configuration, I think it's usable for what it's intended. Let me throw in the power supply and see how the fans are. All right, now with my power supply installed, the fans are running at their maximum speed, so I will silence myself, see if the microphone can pick up the noise. In my opinion, they are super silent. Yeah, not extremely silent, but still, if you put all of your components inside, I don't think they will be that noisy. Speaking of components, the tower height over here on your CPU is up to 164 millimeters, so keep that in mind if you want to use a tower for your cooling your CPU. So if I put my hand down here, I'm definitely feeling a lot of the air coming from the bottom chamber. So this fan is working, putting a lot of air through, and underneath kind of naturally pushes it through these penetrations. So you're gonna have plenty of ventilation. I mean, this is 120s pushing plenty of air inside that small chamber. 120 is exhausting it in the back, naturally exhausting air on top. Even if you don't want to mount any fans, the hot air is gonna escape out here. But I think there's plenty of ventilation. You're not gonna have any problems with this case when it comes to ventilation. So yeah, that's pretty much it with the Okinos Cypress 3. Let's go into the conclusion.
All right, conclusion time. And what do I think about the Okinos Cypress 3? I really like that case. I'm not gonna lie. And regardless of everything else mentioned in the video so far and all the disadvantages and all the missed opportunities, I think the case is priced correctly to kind of overlook and forget some of those issues. For $50, I mean, yeah, you can definitely use it. Worth mentioning, you saw on the video, I used this adapter, SATA to, fan adapter. The maximum speed of each fan is 1,000 RPMs. So making it very silent, not completely silent, but very silent. And we have 3 in the front, 1 in the back. The combined CFMs of the 3 fans in the front is 130. So that's plenty of air being pushed in. Now, if you want to use one of those adapters, which I also showed, the SATA to Molex, and there's different ones, SATA to directly fans, but these are with the reduced voltage. So these are 7 volt. If you plug these in, expect a reduction to 7 volt, and obviously it becomes to about 25 CFMs per fan. So you're looking at 75 to about 80 CFMs being pushed in. So if you want to go to that route to the extreme silence, and I use that to just check it out, and I can tell you it's extremely silent, you can hear it. Obviously the air pushed in is going to be less, reduced from 130 total to about 80 total. So keep that in mind, but if you want to use that, you can do it as well. What else to mention here? Classic look with very elegant elements. That walnut really speaks to my soul. I really like how it's done. But those of you that prefer RGB, there's a version of this case with the ARGB with included controller, which I actually would love to check out as well, because I love when makers adding controllers and not relying on you plug it into a motherboard and then figure out software, installing extra software, all that stuff. So I prefer that options. In this specific configuration with no RGB and the walnut, I think this screams something stealthy, something with no RGB. Put a motherboard that it's almost no LEDs on, putting a GPU that it's almost no LEDs or any kind of RGB on it, and making it super stealthy. And I really like that. I really like that. And props to Okinos for making another compelling product for an excellent price. Again, around $50. Currently it's $58 plus 10% off. They're always offering. So you're looking around $50 roughly getting this case. You can definitely build a nice little stealthy computer. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Hit the thumbs up if you like the video. Stay tuned to the channel. Subscribe if you're new. Check out the link in the description below if you want to support the channel directly. It helps me tremendously to bring you videos like that regularly. And as always, guys, you have a wonderful day.